speak with you today. In 2005, I did not have a penny to my name. I read Jim's book, Investment Biker, in 2005, and he speaks about how he traveled around the world 65,000 miles with his wife, and they visited dozens of countries, and at the time, I didn't even have one stamp in my passport. Since 2005, I have visited 75 countries, and my financial situation has improved. And I can't believe that I'm actually introducing him, because it was one of the few books that I read in my life. And Jim started the Quantum Fund with George Soros in 1973, and I really am honored to introduce him to speak with you today.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Wow. I love a short introduction. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to Flip's discussion, one of the things that I constantly try to explain to people is that everything you believe today is not going to be true in 15 years. Think of any year in history, 1900, 1920, 1950, pick the year, any year. And everything that people thought in that year was wrong 15 years later. So it is all going to change pretty dramatically. And the other thing I should say about, I can say a lot about what I've said, but graphene is going to change everything we know about the world also. And if you don't know the word graphene, you don't have to remember anything else I told you today. Just remember graphene, because the people who know about graphene say it's going to be as important as the internet, just as Flip did. So learn about graphene too. What we're going to talk about now is how I see the world, what's happening in the world, and what I'm doing about it. Doesn't mean you have to do what I do, but at least you'll know what I'm doing. A few years ago, my then fiance, and we were just talking about it, and I was talking about it a little bit. My wife and I, she was my fiance at the time, she's now my wife, and I spent 3 years driving a car. The book that Ronnie was talking about was when I went around the world on a motorcycle once. I did not marry that woman. I did marry the woman that I went around the world in a car with. But we spent 3 years going around the world, 245,000 kilometers to 116 countries, as you can see. And we had a terrific time. We started in Iceland, Europe, Turkey, China, Korea, Japan, back across Siberia, into Mongolia, across Russia, all around Europe, 32 countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, down to the bottom of South America, Central America, up to Alaska, back down to the southern part of the U.S., and back to New York. That was 152,000 miles, 116 countries, 3 years, so you can imagine it was a little bit tiring. So what I want to do now is I'm going to show you a video of what it's like. I'm going to show you a 2-minute video. I cannot show you 5 years of driving around the world in 2 minutes, but I want to give you some idea of what it's like, because there was a survey done recently that the number one dream which people have in the world, not everybody's number one dream, but the dream which comes out on top, is to chuck it all, get in the car, and take off around the world, or the motorcycle. So I hope all of you are going to make so much money here with, where's our leader, with Andrew, going to make so much money that you two are going to get yourself a new spouse, or take the old spouse, take anybody you want, but take a spouse, and head off around the world, because it is a fabulous experience. This will start with us in Iceland,
The two best journeys you've ever had.
toasting each other, hoping we'll make it alive, off to the Great Wall. We did get married on the trip. Here we are cutting our cake. This is our honeymoon. One of many camels we ran into on the road. We went through 15 war zones. These guys were not very friendly at first, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a familiar face. One of many markets we visited. One of many bad roads. It was a sad time. We went to an AIDS orphanage in South Africa. We went to see King Tut. Whenever we could, we stopped at schools because I'm very keen on education. Everybody always wanted their pictures made. Myanmar, which used to be called Burma. One of many roadside stands where we ate and drank. Iguazu Falls in South America. This is the bane of my existence. This is bureaucracy, red tape, regulations. This, on the other hand, is the black market. It's a much higher class of people. And when we got back to America, we kept going. We headed up to Alaska in the dead of winter. And when we got back to New York, our first stop was the World Trade Center. That had blown up while we were gone. Now, when we got back to New York, as you can imagine, after 3 years on the road, we were a bit tired, so we decided we would stop and rest for a while. Well, one result of resting for a while is we now have a baby girl. I had never had a child before. I really used to feel so sorry for people who had children. I could not believe anybody was so foolish as to have a child. Never would I have a child. I just could not believe my friends who ruined their lives by having children. I was never going to waste my time, my energy, my money, on anything. People would say to me, children change your lives. And I said, you poor sap, what a fool. What a fool you are to have a child. Well, I want you to know I was wrong. I was 100% wrong about children. I had my first child when I was 60, and this little girl changed my life for the better. So all those people who said it changes your life knew what they were talking about. If there's anybody in the room who has not done it, I urge you to get home and get on with it. You know, you take a day off. These are difficult times. Don't take a day off now. But go home for lunch. I mean, have a lunch hour. It's a lot of fun. I assure you, it's a lot of fun. Now, one of the things that I tell people when I speak all over the world is be sure to teach your children and grandchildren Mandarin, because Mandarin is going to be the most important language in the 21st century, unless computers do all of our speaking for us. But a few years ago, my wife and I sold our house in New York. We moved to Asia. Everything I'm telling you today, I'm doing myself. I'm not just babbling about it. We sold our house in New York. We moved to Asia because I wanted to prepare her for the 21st century. And the 21st century is going to be the century of Asia, whether we like it or not. There are a lot of people who don't like it. I assure you, do not like the fact that China is on the rise again. I took her there so that we could make sure she knew Asia and that she would speak Mandarin to prepare for the 21st century. Just because you know Asia and you speak Mandarin does not mean you're successful, but it gives you a leg up on a lot of other people. If she winds up working in a Chinese restaurant, at least she's going to be the maitre d', not the dishwasher, if there are people still washing dishes in the future. So go be sure to teach your children Mandarin. The 19th century was the century of the UK. The 20th century was the century of the US. The 21st century is going to be the century of China. China is the only country that I know of in world history that's had recurring periods of greatness. Great Britain was great once, Rome was great once, Egypt was great once. But China's been great 3 or 4 times. They've been the absolute pinnacle nation in the world. They've also collapsed totally into catastrophe and disaster 3 or 4 times in their history. But every time, for whatever reason, after a few decades or centuries at the bottom, they have risen to the top again. It's happening again. China's on the rise again. I'm not suggesting you have to rush out and learn Mandarin or anything, but I do urge you to understand some of the things that are happening in the world. China will have problems. We in the United States became the most successful country in the 20th century, but along the way we had a horrible civil war. We had 15 depressions with a D. We had very little rule of law. We had you could buy and sell congressmen. You could still buy and sell congressmen. But in those days they were very cheap. I happen to agree with Flip that most governments are horrendous and more trouble than they're worth. But America, despite of all of its problems in the 19th century, became the most successful country in the 20th century. China's going to have plenty of problems. I don't know what, how, why, when, but I do know that every individual or family or company or country that rises has problems along the way. So China will certainly have problems, but I urge you to at least, if you don't want to teach your children Mandarin, at least figure out what's going on. And I told you before to go home for lunch one day. I went home for lunch one day, and as you can see, we have two. I have two little girls. Her name is Xiaomi Feng, that's right. Little B. He obviously speaks Chinese. Anyway, be sure, if you go home, and if you do go home for lunch, I know that most people, or certainly in Asia, and even in America, most people think that boys are better. Totally wrong. Totally 100% wrong. Girls are much, much better than boys. So I urge you, when you go home for lunch, make sure you're not a boy, not a girl. So let's talk more about what's going on in the world now.